If you had asked me 3 months ago who was most likely to uncover a life-changing secret about my marriage, I would have said a private investigator, maybe a hacker. I would not have said my 78-year-old neighbor, whose favorite hobbies were watering flowers, spying through lace curtains, and starting every conversation with, "Back in my day." Turns out, back in her day, people apparently paid more attention than I did. My name's Daniel. I'm 36. Married for 7 years to my wife, Emily. No kids, nice house, quiet neighborhood where absolutely nothing exciting ever happened. Every morning followed the same routine. I'd leave for work around 8. Emily worked remotely, so she'd usually still be in pajamas pretending she'd start in 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes often lasted until lunch. I'd tease her about it. "You know," I'd say while grabbing my keys, "some people actually wear pants before noon." She'd smile without looking up from her phone. "Some people have jobs that don't require pretending to enjoy meetings." Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? We argued about normal married people things. Life was comfortable, predictable, safe, which in hindsight should have worried me more, because nothing stays predictable forever. Especially not when your neighbor treats her living room window like the FBI's surveillance headquarters. Her name was Margaret. Sweet old lady, always baking cookies, always feeding birds, always somehow knowing everyone's business before they knew it themselves. I'd always joked that if the government ever needed satellite replacement technology, they should just give Margaret a rocking chair facing the street. She'd have hourly reports. One Tuesday afternoon, I got home from work and was halfway to my front door when I heard her voice. "Daniel!" I turned. Margaret was standing by her garden holding a watering can that looked older than I was. She waved me over. Whenever Margaret waved you over, there were only two possibilities. Either she wanted to give you tomatoes, or information you never asked for, usually both. "How are you, dear?" she asked. "I'm surviving." "Work?" "I managed not to quit today." "That's always encouraging." I laughed. She looked around before lowering her voice dramatically. That should have been my first clue. Old people don't lower their voices unless they're about to reveal one of three things: a family recipe, a neighborhood scandal. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." She hesitated. "What is it?" She tilted her head. "The gentleman." I blinked. "The what?" "The gentleman who keeps visiting your wife." For about 3 seconds, my brain completely stopped functioning. Then it restarted. "I'm sorry?" "The tall man." I stared at her. "I'm not sure I know who you're talking about." "Oh." She frowned. "I've seen him several times." Now, there are moments in life when panic is the appropriate response. This wasn't one of them. Because Margaret also once spent an entire afternoon convinced a raccoon was secretly someone's escaped dog. So naturally, I assumed this was another Margaret moment trademark. "I think you've got the wrong house." She looked genuinely confused. "No," she pointed toward my porch. "I'm almost certain it's yours." I smiled politely. "Emily hasn't mentioned anybody stopping by." "Oh." She looked embarrassed. "Maybe I mixed up the houses." "Probably. I'm getting older." I shrugged. "It happens." She sighed. "My eyesight isn't what it used to be." I wanted to say, "Neither is your neighborhood intelligence network," but I liked Margaret too much. Instead, I smiled. "No worries," she nodded. "Sorry, Daniel." "It's okay." As I walked toward my front door, I couldn't help chuckling. Only Margaret could accidentally accuse your wife of having mysterious male visitors with the same tone she'd used to tell you your roses needed fertilizer. I opened the front door. Emily was on the couch with her laptop, still in pajamas. Naturally, she looked up. Hey, long day?" "I survived?" She smiled. I kissed her forehead and walked into the kitchen. For maybe 5 whole minutes, I didn't even think about what Margaret had said. Then curiosity tapped me on the shoulder. Not suspicion, just curiosity. The kind that whispers, Well, that's weird. So while making coffee, I called into the living room. Random question. Emily didn't even look away from her screen. Those are usually dangerous. Has anyone been stopping by while I'm at work? She looked up. What do you mean? I don't know. I shrugged. Neighbor said she thought she'd seen some guy coming here. Emily blinked, then laughed. Actually laughed. What? Margaret? Yeah. She shook her head. Oh my God. She asked me last month if we'd bought a goat. A goat? Apparently she saw one in our backyard. We don't own a goat. I know. I couldn't help laughing. So, no mysterious visitor? She rolled her eyes dramatically. No. Secret boyfriend? Oh, absolutely. She grinned. I schedule him between my morning coffee and my afternoon spreadsheets. I knew it. He helps me alphabetize the pantry. Monster. I know. We both laughed. That should have been the end of it. Honestly, I wanted it to be. Because the alternative? The alternative would have been ridiculous. After all, if I had to choose between trusting my wife of 7 years or trusting the neighborhood surveillance grandma who once accused a recycling bin of moving suspiciously, well, that didn't exactly feel like a difficult decision. For the next few days, I forgot about the whole thing. Or at least I told myself I did. That's the annoying thing about strange little comments. They don't stay where you leave them. They follow you around quietly, like a song lyric you don't even like. Every time I pulled into the driveway, I glanced at the porch. Every time Emily mentioned her day, some tiny, deeply irritating part of my brain wondered whether busy afternoon meant spreadsheets or a guest appearance from tall, mysterious man. Then I'd immediately feel ridiculous. Emily wasn't acting nervous. She wasn't suddenly hiding her phone or wearing perfume to answer emails. She was exactly the same. She complained about work. She ordered things online and forgot what they were by the time they arrived. Nothing about her behavior screamed secret affair, so I let it go. Then Friday happened. I got home earlier than usual because one of our meetings had been canceled. A rare corporate miracle. I was in a good mood. I even stopped for pastries on the way home, which was my version of spontaneous romance. I parked, grabbed the box, and started toward the house. Daniel? I stopped so quickly I nearly dropped the pastries. Margaret was standing beside her porch again. Same watering can. Different cardigan. Same expression people wear right before saying something that ruins your afternoon. I forced a smile. Hi, Margaret. Could you come here for a moment? I walked over. She looked more serious than before. I saw him again. My stomach tightened, just a little. I shifted the pastry box under my arm. Margaret, we talked about this. I know. She said nobody came by. Margaret's expression changed. Not defensive, not confused, almost apologetic. That's why I wanted to show you. Show me what? She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out her phone. It was an old model in a thick case, the kind designed to survive being dropped downstairs and possibly struck by a small vehicle. She opened a video. I recorded this yesterday, she said. My mouth went dry. You recorded my house? I was recording the blue jay. I looked at her. The bird? Yes. It's been stealing food from the feeder. Criminal. Very bold. She didn't seem to notice the sarcasm. Then she pressed play. The video shook at first. For 2 seconds, all I saw was part of Margaret's porch railing and a blurry shrub. Then the camera shifted toward our house. A man was walking up my driveway. Not an old man, not a delivery driver carrying a box, not someone standing on the sidewalk. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap pulled low. He walked directly to my front door. My brain immediately began producing explanations. Maybe he was selling something. Maybe he had the wrong address. Maybe he was there to fix something. Then the door opened. Emily appeared. Even from across the street, I recognized the shirt she was wearing. Pale blue, loose sleeves, She looked at him. He stepped inside. She closed the door behind him. The video ended. I stared at the frozen screen. For a second, I could hear nothing except the faint hum of traffic farther down the road. Margaret lowered the phone. "That's him." I didn't answer. She looked worried. I wasn't trying to interfere. "What time was this?" "A little after 2. "How long did he stay?" "I don't know." "You didn't see him leave?" "I went inside to make tea." Naturally, my marriage may have been collapsing, but tea remained on schedule. I looked back toward my house. "Are you sure this was yesterday?" "Yes." "Thursday?" "Yes, dear." I nodded slowly. "Okay." Margaret touched my arm. "Maybe it's nothing." That was a lovely sentence. People only say, "maybe it's nothing," when it is very clearly something. I forced a smile. "Probably." She didn't believe me. I didn't believe me either. I walked back toward my house carrying the pastry box like an idiot. I remember looking down at it and thinking how absurd it was. 5 minutes earlier, I'd been excited to surprise my wife with cinnamon pastries. Now I was wondering whether I'd accidentally bought snacks for an interrogation. I opened the front door. "Hey," Emily called from the living room. Her voice sounded completely normal. That somehow made it worse. I stepped inside. She was sitting on the couch, phone in one hand, television on in the background. She smiled when she saw the box. "What's that? Pastries?" Her face lit up. "I married well?" "Apparently." She laughed. "I didn't. Not enough anyway." Her smile faded slightly. "What's wrong?" I set the box on the coffee table. Margaret talked to me again. Emily leaned back. "Oh no, did the goat return?" She showed me a video. Something on Emily's face froze. A video of what? "A man coming into the house yesterday." She blinked. Then she sighed. "Oh, for God's sake." I stared at her. "So someone was here." She gave me a tired look. "It was a plumber." "A plumber?" "Yes." "What was wrong?" "The sink." I glanced toward the kitchen. "Our sink?" "No, Daniel. The neighbor's sink. He came into our house for the atmosphere." There was the sarcasm I usually loved. At that moment, I wanted to place it carefully in a box and throw it into traffic. "What was wrong with the sink?" "It was leaking underneath." "I didn't notice." "Because I cleaned it up." "You didn't mention it." "Because it was fixed." "Who did you call?" She stared at me. "Are you serious?" "I'm asking. I found someone online." "Do you have the receipt?" Her eyebrows rose. "The receipt? Or a message? Appointment confirmation? Something." She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Wow. What? You're actually interrogating me because Margaret filmed a repairman?" "I'm asking a reasonable question." "No. You're asking me to provide documentation because the neighborhood spy network reported suspicious plumbing activity." I took a breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it was a leaking pipe, not open heart surgery." "What company was he from?" "I don't remember." "You don't remember?" "I searched online, called a number, and he came over. I didn't ask for his family history." She picked up her phone and began tapping. "Here." She turned the screen toward me. There was a search history result for local plumbing services. Several links. Nothing specific. Nothing proving anything. But enough to make me feel like a jealous lunatic standing in my own living room holding pastries. "There," she said. "Satisfied?" I rubbed my forehead. "I'm not accusing you of anything." "It feels a lot like you are." "I'm just trying to understand why some guy was in the house and you first said nobody had been here." "I forgot." "You forgot a plumber came into our home?" "I forgot because it wasn't important." "That seems convenient." Her eyes narrowed. "And that seems insulting." I looked at her. She looked angry, hurt even, and I felt guilty. I exhaled. "Okay, I believe you." She stared at me for another second. Then her shoulders relaxed. "Good. I'm sorry." "You should be." That bothered me. Not enough to say anything. just enough to stay. She opened the pastry box. Ooh, cinnamon. And just like that, the conversation was over. At least for her. We ate in front of the television. She laughed at a show. I pretended to watch it. But my mind kept returning to the video. The man hadn't carried tools, no bag, no toolbox, no equipment. Maybe they were in his pockets. Maybe he'd already brought them inside earlier. Maybe he was a minimalist plumber. Maybe modern plumbing had become app-based and I'd missed the revolution. I tried to make the explanation fit. It almost did. Then I remembered the way Emily had opened the door. She hadn't looked surprised. She hadn't spoken to him on the porch. She'd opened it quickly, stepped aside, and let him in, like she had been waiting. That night, Emily fell asleep beside me within minutes. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. At one point, she rolled over and placed her hand on my chest. Normally, that would have calmed me. Instead, I found myself wondering whether she had touched him with the same hand. That was the moment I knew the doubt wasn't going away. I hated myself for it. So sometime after midnight, while my wife slept peacefully beside me, I made a decision. I was going to find out exactly who had been coming into my house, and I was going to do it without asking Emily another question. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. I kissed Emily goodbye, grabbed my keys, and drove to work exactly as I always did. The only difference was that I didn't go to work. I went to an electronics store. I knew absolutely nothing about security cameras. 10 minutes later, a salesman was enthusiastically explaining the difference between cloud storage, motion zones, night vision, and something called AI detection. I just need to know when someone comes into my house. He nodded. Cheating spouse? I looked at him. Is it that obvious? He shrugged. You'd be surprised how many cameras we sell for exactly that reason. Great. Apparently, I had joined a very depressing customer loyalty program. I bought 3 small wireless cameras, one for the front entry, one facing the living room, one covering the back door. They were tiny enough that unless you were looking for them, you'd never notice. That afternoon, I left work early, claiming I had a dentist appointment. Emily was still working upstairs when I got home. While she was on a video meeting, I installed every camera in less than 20 minutes. Then I connected them to my phone. Done. For the first time in days, I felt calmer. I wasn't accusing her anymore. I wasn't guessing. If someone was coming over, I'd know. If nobody came, I'd delete the cameras, apologize to Emily, and spend the rest of my life making fun of myself. That seemed fair. The first day, nothing. The second day, a package delivery. The mailman. A squirrel that somehow triggered the motion sensor 3 different times. By Thursday, I was getting notifications every time a leaf moved. The cameras had become less of an investigation and more of an extremely boring nature documentary. Friday came. Nothing. Monday. Nothing again. I started feeling ashamed. Maybe Emily had been telling the truth all along. Maybe there really had been a plumber. Maybe Margaret had accidentally recorded the one completely innocent visit that would forever make me look like a paranoid husband. I almost removed the cameras that evening. Instead, I decided to wait 1 more week, just to be sure. 3 days later, I was sitting in a meeting. Our manager was reading bullet points from a PowerPoint that every single person in the room had already read. Corporate efficiency at its finest. My phone vibrated. Motion detected. Front door camera. Without thinking, I unlocked it under the conference table. The live feed opened. A man was walking up my driveway. Tall, dark jacket, baseball cap. The same man from Margaret's video. Every hair on my arm stood up. He didn't knock. He simply walked to the porch. Less than 2 seconds later, the front door opened. Emily. She hadn't even waited for him to ring the bell. She smiled. Not the polite smile people give delivery drivers. A real smile. Then she stepped forward and pulled him by the sleeve into the house. He wrapped his arms around her. She kissed him. Not on the cheek. Not a friendly hug. A real kiss. long enough to erase every excuse I'd been making for the past 2 weeks. My ears started ringing. I couldn't hear my manager anymore. I couldn't hear anything. The man took Emily's hand. The front door closed. The screen went still. For several seconds, I just stared at my phone. Then I stood up. My manager looked at me. "Daniel, I have to leave. We're in the middle of, my wife is cheating on me." The room went completely silent. Nobody tried to stop me. I grabbed my keys and ran. I don't even remember getting to the parking lot. All I remember thinking was one thing. Please don't let them leave before I get home. I don't remember leaving the conference room. 1 second, my manager was talking about quarterly projections. The next, I was sprinting down the hallway with my phone still in my hand. I nearly crashed into a coworker carrying a stack of folders. "Daniel, what the—" "Sorry." I didn't stop. By the time I reached the parking lot, my heart was pounding so hard it felt like I'd already run a marathon. I unlocked my car, threw my laptop bag into the passenger seat, and climbed behind the wheel. For a second, I just sat there. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key into the ignition. "No, come on." I took one deep breath. Missed again. On the third try, the engine finally started. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Another notification. Motion detected. Living room camera. I looked at the screen for half a second before forcing myself to put it face down. I couldn't watch while driving. Not because I didn't want to. Because I knew if I started watching, I'd either run a red light or wrap my car around a tree. I pressed harder on the accelerator. Every traffic light turned red. Every slow driver suddenly became my personal enemy. There was a pickup truck in front of me moving like the driver was sightseeing. I wanted to scream. Instead, I kept one hand glued to the steering wheel while the other kept reaching toward my phone. Another vibration, then another. Motion detected. Motion detected. Motion detected. My imagination was doing a fantastic job filling in the blanks. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe I had misunderstood the kiss. Maybe she pushed him away afterward. Maybe, no. I actually said it out loud. I had seen the kiss. There was nothing to misunderstand. I grabbed my phone at the next red light and called Emily. 1 ring, 2, 3, straight to voicemail. I frowned. Emily almost never ignored my calls. I called again. This time it went directly to voicemail. She had declined it. Another notification appeared across the screen. Backdoor camera, motion detected. I clenched my jaw. "What are you doing?" I whispered it to nobody. The light finally turned green. I drove even faster. When I turned onto our street, everything looked painfully ordinary. Kids were riding bicycles. Someone was walking a golden retriever. Mr. Peterson was washing his SUV. Across the street, Margaret was trimming her roses. She looked up the moment my car came flying around the corner. Our eyes met for a split second. The expression on her face changed immediately. She knew. She didn't know what exactly, but she knew I had seen something. I barely slowed down before pulling into my driveway. I jumped out of the car so fast I forgot to shut the driver's door. It stayed wide open behind me. I reached the porch. The front door wasn't fully closed. It was resting against the frame, unlocked. Emily always locked the front door, always, even if she was only taking the trash outside. I slowly pushed it open. The house was quiet, too quiet. "Emily?" No answer. I stepped inside. The television was playing some home renovation show. Nobody was watching it. On the coffee table sat 2 mugs. One was Emily's favorite white mug with tiny blue flowers. The other was a plain black mug, still half full, fresh. Next to it sat a man's sunglasses. Definitely not mine. I felt something twist in my stomach. "Emily?" Still nothing. Then, a sound, very faint. A laugh, upstairs. A man's voice, low, comfortable, like he belonged there. A second later, Emily laughed too. Not nervous laughter, not polite laughter. The kind of laugh she used to have when we stayed up watching terrible movies together. For one stupid second, I froze. My brain was still searching for one last explanation. Maybe they were discussing work, maybe it was a contractor, maybe. Then I noticed something near the bottom of the staircase, a pair of men's shoes, large, leather, expensive, placed neatly against the wall. Whoever owned them wasn't planning on leaving anytime soon. I looked at them for several seconds. Then I slowly lifted my eyes toward the second floor. Another laugh. Closer this time. Coming from our bedroom. Not the guest room. Not the office. Our bedroom. The room we'd picked together. The room we'd painted together. The room where we'd planned our future together. I started climbing the stairs. One step, then another. My heartbeat was so loud it drowned out almost everything else. As I reached the hallway, I could hear muffled voices behind the bedroom door. I couldn't make out the words. Only their tone. Relaxed. Happy. Like they had absolutely no reason to expect me home for another 4 hours. I stopped in front of the door. My hand slowly wrapped around the handle. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Part of me still hoped I'd open it and discover the world's most awkward plumbing repair. Instead, I took one slow breath, pressed the handle down, and pushed the door open. The bedroom door swung open. For a fraction of a second, nobody moved. Emily was sitting on the edge of our bed. The man from the videos stood beside her. His hand was still resting on her shoulder. All three of us just stared at each other. It was strangely quiet. Not because there wasn't anything to say, because none of us had expected this version of the afternoon. Emily was the first to react. She jumped to her feet so fast she nearly knocked over the nightstand. "Daniel?" She looked like she'd seen a ghost. The man slowly turned toward me. He looked to be around 40, well-dressed, confident. Or at least he had been confident about 3 seconds earlier. Now he looked like he was trying to calculate whether he could make it to the window before I reached him. Nobody spoke. I looked around the room. Our bed was unmade. A bottle of wine sat on my nightstand. 2 wine glasses. One was almost empty. The other still had lipstick on the rim. His jacket was hanging over my chair. The one Emily bought me for my birthday because she said I deserved one nice thing in the bedroom besides her. That joke suddenly wasn't as funny anymore. I looked back at Emily. "So?" My voice surprised even me. Calm. Very calm. "Is he the plumber?" Emily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I nodded slowly. "I have to admit, this is the first plumber I've ever met who fixes leaking pipes while drinking Cabernet." The man cleared his throat. "I think I should." "No." I held up a hand without even looking at him. "You've already done enough." He fell silent. I looked at Emily again. "You lied to me." "Daniel?" You looked me in the eyes. She took one cautious step toward me. "Please let me explain." I actually laughed, not because anything was funny, because the sentence was so unbelievably predictable. "Explain what?" She swallowed. "It isn't what it looks like." I burst out laughing. A real laugh this time. "Oh, that's fantastic." I pointed around the room. "You two are alone, in our bedroom, drinking wine. He kissed you. You kissed him back. I watched it live from my office." I shook my head. "And somehow," I looked directly into her eyes. "This isn't what it looks like?" She covered her face with one hand. The man finally spoke. "I didn't know she was married." Emily whipped around so fast I thought she might actually break her neck. "What?" He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "You told me you were separated." Silence. I slowly turned toward him. "I'm sorry," I said. "What did you just say?" He looked from me to Emily. "You said the marriage was over." Emily's face went completely white. "Mark." "No," I interrupted. "Please." I pointed at him. "Continue." He hesitated. I think I should leave. I think you should answer one question first." He didn't move. "How long have you been seeing my wife?" Emily practically shouted. "Mark, don't!" Too late. He looked at me. "A little over 4 months." 4 months. I actually repeated it in my head. 4 months. Not a mistake. Not one stupid night. Not some drunken disaster. 4 months. I slowly nodded. 4 months. I repeated quietly. Then I looked at Emily. So every day when I left for the office thinking that my wife was working? She didn't say a word. I let out a short laugh. It turned out she was just having a good time. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind people smile right before something inside them finally breaks. Tears began rolling down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you. I clapped once. My favorite sentence. I never wanted to hurt you. I nodded. You just accidentally did it for 4 consecutive months. She tried to grab my arm. I stepped back. No. Please. I made a mistake. I looked at her for several long seconds. Then I quietly asked, was I ever supposed to find out? She didn't answer. That hurt more than the affair itself. Because silence is an answer. She wasn't sorry she had done it. She was sorry the schedule had fallen apart. Sorry my meeting had ended early. Sorry an old woman across the street had been paying attention. Without Margaret, I'd probably still be sitting at work right now, completely convinced I had the happiest marriage on the block. Nobody spoke for what felt like an entire minute. Emily was crying. Mark looked like he desperately wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. I looked at both of them and realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I took one slow breath. Then I looked at Mark. You. He straightened. Get your jacket. He blinked. What? You heard me? He looked at Emily, hoping she'd rescue him. She didn't. I said, get your jacket. He quietly picked it up from the chair. I nodded toward the hallway. And leave. I'm sorry, man. I laughed. Oh, don't do that. Don't call me man. We are not friends. He lowered his eyes. I didn't know. I believe you. He looked surprised. I glanced at Emily. Because apparently my wife forgot to mention one tiny detail. Daniel. I ignored her. I walked up to Mark until we were standing face to face. If I ever see you near this house again. He immediately raised his hands. You won't. I wasn't finished. He swallowed. If I ever see you here again, I'll assume you're trespassing. I understand. Good. He nodded once, then hurried toward the bedroom door like a man escaping a burning building. 30 seconds later, I heard the front door close. Silence, just me and Emily. She took one cautious step toward me. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Please, just listen. I held up my hand. For the last 15 minutes you've asked me to listen. I listened. I heard everything I needed to hear. She wiped tears from her face. I love you. I couldn't help smiling. It wasn't a happy smile. You should have remembered that 4 months ago. It didn't mean anything. I actually laughed. My second favorite sentence. It didn't mean anything. She cried harder. If it meant nothing. I looked around the room. Why did you risk everything for it? I walked to the closet, opened it, pulled out the largest suitcase we owned. Emily looked confused. What are you doing? I dropped it onto the floor. It landed with a loud thud. I'm making this easy. Daniel. I unzipped it and pushed it toward her. Start packing. Her face lost all color. What? You heard me. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. She shook her head. This is my home. No. I looked directly into her eyes. It was our home. You don't get to cheat on your husband for 4 months and still call it yours. She started crying again. Please don't do this. I didn't invite another man into our bedroom. I didn't lie to you. I didn't make the neighbors think they were losing their minds. I pointed at the suitcase. Pack. She didn't move. I said, my voice stayed calm. Pack. I'm not leaving. I shrugged. Then I'll call the police and tell them an unwelcome guest refuses to leave my property. You wouldn't. I've spent the last 2 weeks discovering I have no idea what you think I would or wouldn't do. She stared at me, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. She slowly walked to the closet, pulled out a sweater, then another. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped them twice. For 7 years I'd watched this woman unpack suitcases after vacations. Now I was watching her pack one because she had destroyed our marriage. Neither of us said another word. There wasn't much left to say. Emily left that afternoon with 2 suitcases. She cried all the way to the front door. She stopped on the porch and turned around one last time. "Do you really think there's no way back from this?" I looked at her. "You didn't destroy our marriage in one afternoon." She frowned. "You destroyed it over 4 months. I just found out today." She lowered her head. "I hope one day you'll forgive me." "I probably will." Her eyes filled with hope. "But forgiving you and trusting you are 2 completely different things." She stood there for another few seconds before quietly walking to her car. She drove away without looking back. I watched until the car disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside. The house felt painfully quiet. There were still 2 wine glasses on the bedroom dresser. I threw both of them straight into the trash. Over the next few weeks, everything happened surprisingly fast. Emily moved into an apartment across town. I hired a divorce attorney. Considering the videos from my cameras and Emily's admission in front of both me and Mark, there wasn't much to argue about. She didn't fight the divorce. Maybe guilt finally caught up with her. Maybe she simply knew she'd lost. 3 months later, the judge signed the papers. Just like that. 7 years became a stack of documents. Life has a strange way of moving on whether you're ready or not. I repainted the bedroom, bought a new mattress, sold the old bed. Some people told me that was unnecessary. Maybe. One Saturday morning, I was mowing the lawn when I heard a familiar voice. "Daniel." I looked up. Margaret was standing by the fence holding a plate covered with a towel. "I made blueberry pie." Of course she did. She always brought pie when life fell apart. I walked over. "Thank you." She looked at me carefully. "How are you doing?" I thought about giving the automatic answer. "I'm fine." Instead, I shrugged. "Better than I was." She nodded. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I felt terrible after showing you that video." I smiled. "You didn't ruin my marriage." She looked down. "I've been thinking about it every day." I shook my head. "My marriage was already ruined. I just didn't know it." She sighed. "I almost deleted that recording." "I'm glad you didn't." She looked surprised. "Really? If you hadn't shown it to me?" I looked at my house. "I'd probably still be leaving for work every morning, kissing my wife goodbye while she waited for someone else to show up." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "You know." "What?" "I really was recording that blue jay." I laughed. "I believe you. It's still stealing birdseed. I hope it wins." She laughed too. As I turned to go back inside, she called after me. "Daniel? Yeah? Next time you get married?" I raised an eyebrow. "Make sure your neighbor is noisy." I couldn't help laughing. "I think I'll just choose a better wife." She nodded. "That might work too." I carried the pie inside, closed the front door, and looked around the house. For the first time in months, it was quiet. Not the quiet of lies, not the quiet of secrets, just peace. It wasn't the ending I had imagined when I got married, but it was the one I needed. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the person who saves your life isn't a detective, a lawyer, or a hero. Sometimes, she's just the elderly lady across the street who waters her flowers every afternoon and refuses to miss a thing. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.